to be working in a field where I could contribute to the war effort, I really felt happy. The sending Morse code was interesting. The shift work was a pain, but helping the war effort. And that was important to me.
During the Second World War, Canada needed all Canadians to pitch in and support the war effort. Canadian women enthusiastically embraced this opportunity to work in factories and newly created women military units. The Royal Canadian Air Force's Women's Division had more than 17,000 members.
I worked at a factory in Amherst, and they built the Avro Anson. But I ended up in the office filing stuff. The welding part was downstairs on the floor. We could see them. And I discovered that they were making more money on the floor. And being nosy, I was watching all this. And I said, well, it didn't look hard, so I said, what do we do? And we had to take a course in welding. And I remember the first night I took it, the guy that was teaching me laid a hot pipe down in front of me, and I picked it up to put the lugs on, or whatever you call those little things, and I burnt my hand, and they took me into the doctor. And because my then fiance, who became my husband, he was standing there smiling, and I think they were trying to make me say something, ouch or something, and I was bound I wasn't going to show, because if you're going to work downstairs with the guys, you better be brave, you know. I think they were just testing my mettle, you know, trying to see how much I could take. And it might have had to do with what we had to do as women, you know, I don't know. When we took the course, we just put our initial, first initial, so that they wouldn't know whether we were women or men. And they tested us that way too. And they discovered that all the women were passing it more than the men. And the explanation they gave, it was something to do with we were used to sewing. And when you're making the weld, we were very even, where the men would make it bumpy, sort of. And the men were making 60 cents an hour, and the women were only making 40 cents an hour. And of course, they had a union, but we were not allowed to join it. But it never affected our feelings, like we didn't hate the men or anything. We just put up with it. It was part of the world in those days. Oh, I suppose some of the boys teased us a lot, maybe, and they we had to wear a white coverall, and we hated it. Like, I don't know what you call them now, the whole one piece that workers wear. And they would always say, oh, you have pink pants on today, because they would see it through the slit where the pocket was. But you just stood up to them and think of something to do. Or I wouldn't give him the torch when he wanted it or something, you know, you'd just play little tricks on them. When I worked at the factory or the bank, The sense of patriotism with me was there because my brother was a mid-upper gunner in a plane, and we were very proud of what we were doing. Anyone that I knew was. I wasn't terribly concerned about the plane I was working on, what it would do in the war, how it would help us. I just knew we had to make a lot of them and make them fast because the Germans were getting stronger and stronger, and that's the only thing you'd ever talk about. We just felt we had to do everything we could to help the war effort.
How many of these trainers were built in Canada?
Not sure, but plenty. Many other types of aircraft, too. This damn war. It's got things all twisted inside out. At home, even women are working in factories to keep us supplied with aircrafts. Makes it feel like we're not fighting hard enough to end this mess sooner. Women shouldn't have to work. It's not right.
That's quite a sexist comment.
It's a what comment?
Let me put it another way. You don't think a woman can do a man's job?
Sure they can. They're proving themselves over here and at home, aren't they? But because us men are over here fighting, the gals back home have an opportunity to work. You tell me, Andy, what's gonna happen when all the fighting is over and all of us men go home looking for work? You think all those women working now are gonna wanna give that up?
You might be in for a surprise, how it all turns out.
Oh yeah?
Morse code is a bunch of dots and dashes, and we were taught first the dots, you call them dit, and the dashes you call da. When they told me I was going to go to Canada, I was very excited. 2 reasons. One, I'd get to use the code I knew, and secondly, I would fly and to another country, because Newfoundland was not part of Canada then. And that was exciting. My job in Gander, I was one of, 20, I guess, radio operators sending and receiving messages. These messages were on little squares of paper, and they were encoded 5 capital letters, space, 5 capital letters, space, 5 capital letters, all mixed up capital letters. When they gave me a message to send, I would see these 5 letters, and I would use the bug and send in dots and dashes, say Q, dash, dash, dot, dash. So, dot, dot, dot. Sending and receiving messages, we were concerned about what they contained. And some people said weather reports. Well, I imagine they sent more than that. I suspect that the RAF would rather have their messages that the receiver would understand, and hopefully that the enemy would not. I guess the most stressful part of the job was trying to be civil all the time, because you're fighting being tired, for one thing. you're meeting difficult situations, and when people are talking about their homes and their families and they're lonely, trying to give sympathy, you just wish you could help a little more. I think I'm the kind of person that a lot of people confide in. I don't know what it is about me that makes me friendly and willing to listen. And being a woman, possibly it would help.
Dames, you can tell them anything. Always lending an ear when things get a little tough over here. There's something about them that makes you naturally want to open up to them. You know what I'm saying?
I guess it's the mom thing, right? You know, they're always there for you.
Yeah. Don't always sound like a couple of pathetic sods.
Whatever that means. Anyway, here's something else for you to chew on. Many believe that there would be a lot less wars if women ran the world.
I was in the WAAF, Women's Auxiliary Air Force, which was a branch of the RAF, and I was stationed at Biggin Hill in Kent, and I worked in the ops room. Biggin Hill was Fighter Command, which took in most of the southeast corner of Britain. So it was a busy sector because most of the, we were very close to France, and the Germans used to quite often make quick flights across to Britain. My job as a plotter, I would use a long rod with a magnet on the end. We used metallic arrows which were colored. That arrow would indicate the direction of the plane, and you just leaned over and put it wherever the radar operator was telling you from a radar station on the coast. They would tell us if it was a friendly or foe, and we would also get the information, how high it was and the number, because quite often it would be 10 plus, 20 plus. We were pushing the arrow in the direction of the flight of the plane, or planes it could be. It was very important that you put your plot in the right place, because so many people were relying on that, particularly the officers who were in contact with the aerodrome, for the fighter pilots who were eventually going to intercept the German planes. If the plot wasn't in the right place, then planes that would be sent to intercept would be going to the wrong place. Well, at first I was a little nervous and wanted to make sure I was going to do it right, because sometimes those plots were coming across into, you were hearing them very fast, because when it wasn't that just one German was coming over, quite often you'd get 2 or 3 groups of them. When I was plotting the German planes coming in, I think you get a mixed feeling, You just hope that they get brought down and that they don't do that much damage. Yeah, well, I felt good because I thought, well, I was helping the war, And the other thing was, I had a pretty kind of lonely life because my parents had separated when I was young, and I was brought up by my grandmother and my father,
So going into the Air Force was kind of fun for me. And when I was in the WAAFs, I made a lot of good friends. And if you ever saw our wedding picture, they're all in our wedding picture. Often wonder where they all are, those girls I was with. They were a nice bunch.
Wow. I never realized that being a plotter had such life and death consequences attached to it.
Sometimes it's the little things, like pushing a small wooden figure across a huge map of Europe, that have the greatest impact on a sortie, Andy. Everything's connected some way or another.
When I worked at the factory, there were posters on the walls, and it would be a picture of someone holding their finger to their mouth and going, shh, because you were not supposed to discuss, even I presume, anything that was going on in the factory. That's how I took it. And we were checked at night when we left, and when we came in with a parcel, we had to let them inspect it. The secrecy. And I was used to that because writing to John, the letters were all blacked out where we didn't want us to say things, you know. But it never bothered us because we knew, you know, a lot of people's lives depended on this.
When I was in Gander, we were not allowed on the airfield until after the war. We were to go straight to the hangar or the cafeteria. Because of the war, they kept the airfield quite secret.
I would say, finally, that whatever we did on base was we never broadcast it, and we kept it to ourselves because it was all very, was still, we were still at war. So you had to be careful what you said and did.
Must have been tough for all those involved in the war to not talk about it, to keep it all to themselves.
Loose lips sink ships. There are a lot of spies out there, on both sides, just waiting to soak up a juicy secret from a leaky faucet.
And how is that prevented from happening?
By keeping the information at a need-to-know basis, by limiting the fraternization between various military and civilian organizations. But sometimes each side leaks misinformation to confuse one another.
Really? So things haven't changed that much.
My job as an arms tech was to make sure the machine guns were working properly. We had to remove them from the wings, carry them to our tent, repair whatever was wrong, and then put them back on the planes. Our repair tent was right there on the airfield. On each wing, there was 2 303s and 1 0.5 gun. When you're working with live ammunition, it's dangerous all the time. You need to take precautions all the time. Dismantling, cleaning, reloading, and replacing the guns. You couldn't drag your feet about it. You had to do the work as quick as possible because you never knew when the order would come down for the plane to take off. When the job was done on a plane, you had to sign a ticket. It was serious work, and it didn't matter which plane you worked on. Loading bombs onto Lancasters or whatever. You had to sign your name on the ticket when the work was done. If someone's signature was on a gun that had not been functional, well, that person would have been called up to the CO's office and questioned as to what had happened. And depending on what he said, or the reasons why the work hadn't been done properly, he might face a court-martial. It's not just that person. It's the pilot's life too. If the gun jams and the pilot can't fire the gun, what can he do? His life's on the line. The pilots and officers would always show us respect, because when they take that plane up, they knew we had done our job right. The pilots wouldn't mix too much with the others. It isn't that they were in a higher class than the rest of us. Not at all. We were all there for the same reason: to defend the country we were in. Bottom line, we were defending our own country too.
Et au fond, c'était notre pays à nous autres aussi. Were your bombs or munitions ever improperly loaded onto your lank, Johnny?
Sure, it happens. Reports are filed, and you hope it doesn't happen again. Having everything documented keeps everyone on their toes. Things can go sideways real fast if it isn't.
Did you ever pull aside one of your ground crew and chew them out?
No, I wouldn't do that.
Why?
Why? Because it's like I said, it's all documented. And the bottom line is, we all respect one another and the tough jobs we have to do. We might keep to ourselves on the ground, as air crew and ground crew usually don't mix, but in the air, a sortie's success relies on teamwork.
Before takeoff, we'd be loaded up with our bombs. At one time, we had 6 tons of bombs and about 2,000 gallons of gasoline on board, loaded full up. We took off. At about 100 or 200 feet from the ground, all of a sudden our right wing dips like that. We lost our right engine. Normally, that would be a death sentence, but our pilot was such an exceptional pilot that he managed to maintain control of the plane. At about 1,000 feet up, he said, "Guys, we have a choice. Either we circle the base for 5 or 6 hours in order to burn enough fuel to land safely with our bombs, or we fly 100 miles off the coast, drop our bombs in the sea, and make our way home with the fuel. What do you say?" Dropping our bombs in the sea was quicker, so we said, let's do that. So we started a slow climb. At about 12,000 feet, we were about 100 miles from the coast. Everything was under control. Our main prop was stopped. The pilot said, "Things are looking good from where I sit. What do you say we go on?" We all said, let's do it. So we flew onto our target. Our speed was reduced, so when we got to the target, everyone had already left. We were all alone above Germany, which was a good thing because the bomb aimer had perfect sighting right on top of the target. So he drops the bombs. We take a nice picture, and we turn back home all proud of ourselves. Not much later, our mid-top gunner says, "Skipper, 6 enemy fighter planes coming our way. Not a good position to be in. Skipper says, take it easy, guys, especially you gunners. Don't shoot first. Wait till they shoot at us before you open fire. Through some kind of miracle, the German fighters turned around and flew back to Germany. And we flew back to England. We got to the base an hour late. We'd disappeared. We'd been listed as MIA, missing in action. But there we were, proud as peacocks, and very happy to be there. We were sure our pilot would receive a decoration for bravery. The next morning, the whole squadron is gathered, and the CEO is standing in front of us, and he says, "Is Sergeant Baudouin somewhere in the crowd?" Aha. This means the Distinguished Flying Medal for sure. I want everybody to look at this man. Yesterday, Flight Sergeant Baudouin here lost an engine on takeoff, and yet he continued onto the target. Here it comes, we thought. Sergeant Baudouin, all I can say is, I admire your courage, but you haven't got 2 cents worth of judgment or intelligence. That was all he got for his bravery. The worst of it all for us is that in the previous 6 months, in our squadron, 2 crews had problems on their way to the target, had decided to proceed anyways and dropped their bombs before returning home. Immediately, both those pilots had been awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Pilots were awarded crosses, non-commissioned officers were awarded medals. Our pilot was a sergeant. Maybe sergeants weren't as intelligent as commissioned officers. Have I explained how come he became a sergeant? At the end of flight training, when you got your wings, either as a pilot, a navigator, or whatever, you were automatically promoted to the rank of sergeant. If your marks were exceptionally good, you received an officer's commission. You became a pilot officer. Sergeant Baudouin was an exceptional pilot, even if he wasn't highly educated, and he didn't speak very good English. His instructor had asked him, "How do you feel about going overseas?" Sergeant Baudouin answered as best as he could in his faulty English, "I don't care." Aha, this man does not care to go overseas. And that's why Sergeant Baudouin wasn't offered a commission from Her Majesty.
I can't believe it. Just because the instructor misunderstood what the pilot said, he didn't become an officer? And because of that, he didn't get the medal he deserved? It's messed up.
That's the size of it. Not surprising, though. I can't understand half of what the other Allied pilots are saying over here, not even the upper crust British ones. But somehow we make it work, even though at times things get lost in translation.
Maybe it was more important that we understand the cause that we're fighting for than understanding each other, but still, it sucks that this heroic pilot didn't get the recognition he deserved.
Happens more often than you think.